Hello, my name is Vanessa Tejas, and I'm going to be speaking on the importance of child abuse. So, what is child abuse? Child abuse is the physical or mental injury, sexual abuse, negligent treatment, or maltreatment of a child younger than the age of 18 by a person who is responsible for the child's welfare. There are different types of child abuse, which can include emotional, physical, sexual, and neglect. So to the right here, it shows the different types of abuses, and as you can see, neglect is the most common form of child abuse. So statistics show that in an estimated of 1,670 children died from abuse and neglect in the United States alone, which was in the year of 2015. Every year, nearly 700,000 children are abused in the US. The youngest children were most vulnerable to maltreatment. Neglect is the most common form of maltreatment, just like I was saying earlier. And about 4 out of 5 abusers are actually the victim's parents. To me, that was very surprising to learn that most of the abusers are the child's parents. Who does child abuse affect? So, child abuse is a social problem affecting children all around the world, not just in the United States, but everywhere around. Child abuse is something that is widely known. CPS, which is Child Protective Services, protects more than 3 million children. Child abuse mainly affects the child. Effects on the child can include physical and psychological. Um, for some examples would be shaken head syndrome, PTSD, emotional and or sexual dysfunction. So when a child does get abused, they can suffer many consequences, and these are just some. The shaken head syndrome is actually one of the most common forms where infants can die. Many parents get angry with the child and they shake the child, and the baby ends up dying from brain damage. Children who were abused become abusers. This is important because when this happens, it's continuing an endless cycle. So children get abused, they grow up and get physical and psychological effects, and then they become the abusers themselves. So I'm giving this example of the movie Precious because this movie is a great example of child abuse. The movie highlights how children's parents can be the abusers and how it affects the child. The main character, which is Precious here in the picture, she was abused by her parents and it caused her emotional distress and lack of education. So I thought this was a great example if anybody has watched this movie on child abuse and how it can affect children and how parents really are the 4 out of 5 people who abuse children. So some contributing factors to child abuse. There's actually many contributing factors as to why people abuse children. Some of those may include inaccessible or unaffordable health care, unaffordable daycare, and any type of care for children may lead parents to want to abuse the children. Poverty and unemployment is another big one. Adults who were previously abused later become the abusers, as I was just previously saying. Um, People who are on drugs, alcohol, if they're suffering from psychological or emotional problems. Single parents may even be the ones who are abusing children. Lack of religion is also another important one. Divorce, household dysfunction, trouble in marriage, stress. So really anything that is affecting one's lives, depending on their circumstances in their life, can affect the way they are with the children, or not even just their children, any children in general, and may cause them to abuse children sexually, emotionally, or neglect them. And some consequences of child abuse. So physical injuries may cause pain, disfigurement, scarring, physical disability, and even death. As I was mentioning earlier, the shaken baby syndrome, parents shake their baby and causes them death, or they may sexually abuse their child and it may lead to death. Um, Complex post-traumatic stress disorder or post-traumatic stress disorder is another consequence of child abuse. Um, like I was saying earlier, the cycle continues. So if someone got abused as a child, it affected them emotionally, and now they grew up and they abused other children or children of their own, and then those children get affected, and then they grow up and abuse their children, and it's just a never-ending cycle, which is a huge consequence in child abuse. Also, emotional consequences, it may disturb their how they feel or who they trust. It's very powerful on a child. Children definitely suffer the most. In some cases, death may occur. Abusers gain gratification from abusing the child. So, although it may be hurtful for the child, one group that gets benefited would be the actual abuser. They gain this gratification from power, from being able to control someone sexually, emotionally, and they have this power because they're holding it over another person. Also, another group who is affected would be the lack of social workers. I'm sorry, another consequence would be lack of social workers, which means that they're not providing the children with the help that they need. In many cases, social workers have been so overwhelmed with all of the cases going on and all of the child abuse that they're not able to get to the children in time, or give them their full attention or represent them fully in court or in the foster home, and the children end up dying. It results in death. So that is a big consequence of that child abuse. People who have been abused, I'm sorry, children who have been abused may suffer. So here I put a picture. It says, "It shouldn't hurt to be a child." And there's stick figures of children who are sad. So being a child, you're new in the world and you're learning as you grow. And then you have these older adults or older people who are just abusing you, and it really affects children emotionally and physically. So it shouldn't hurt to be a child. Being a child should be of experience and fun and loving, not dealing with, you know, thinking that someone has power over you and can hurt you is okay. So groups affected. Groups of people that can be hurt by this issue would include social workers, as I was just mentioning. Social workers may experience secondhand trauma. So they can experience stress from the overload, which may cause psychological trauma. Also, cutting child welfare funding can hurt the children because not enough funding would be provided to find these children safe homes or solutions for their problems, or helping them get away from the abuse. So it's really important to keep child welfare and social workers funded so that they're able to help these children. So I wanted to mention foster care just because children who are abused or neglected in a family or live in a home where abuse is occurring, they'll be taken out of that situation and they'll be placed in a government supervised foster care. So foster care is supposed to be, children who don't have parents, who have been abused, who are going through difficult things in their life. And foster care is supposed to be somewhere where they can go to get away from all of that. There are many hundreds of thousands of children in foster care. They're either waiting to be reunited with a family or to be adopted. But so many people don't want to adopt these children because they tend to be older and more likely to have more emotional or physical problems. Every year, thousands of children who have not been adopted or reunited with their families must leave foster care when they turn 18. And many youth who age out of foster care struggle to fend for themselves, and many become homeless. So overall, foster care should be a place where children are placed to feel safe, but in some cases, the child even gets abused or neglected in foster care. I provided an example here of Angelina Jolie. She is a famous actor, and she adopted children from foster care and gave them a better chance of life. So I really think that was something that was interesting and inspiring, that many people should consider doing. So who has the power to make a difference? So the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act was enacted in 1974 by the US government when child abuse was noticeably rising. Social workers can be a voice for change since they witness daily child abuse and child maltreatment. When social issues such as child abuse gain acknowledgement, the government and other officials can frame the issue for society to acknowledge it as a serious problem, just as the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act was placed because child abuse was noticeably growing. And also, of course, the media has a large effect on social issues and the advertising of child abuse. So I wanted to mention the symbolic interactionist theory. The symbolic interactionist theory does include Bloomer's stages of social problems, and I believe that this can help understand the development of child abuse becoming a social problem. For example, child abuse had been occurring for some time but didn't get the recognition until the 1970s. College students, parents, the media finally recognized the existence of child abuse, and then organized groups like foster care, welfare programs, they work together to help resolve the problem. And then finally, the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act was enacted in 1974 when child abuse was noticeably rising. Some may disagree with this theory that social problems are not only problems if they are recognized. For example, many cases, child abuse is not always reported, but it is still happening. Therefore, it is still a social problem. Even if other people don't recognize it as a problem, it is something that is still happening. So I would have to agree with this statement. Just because someone doesn't report it doesn't mean that it's not a social problem and it's not something that we should be worried about. So I believe there are many ways in which we can make a difference. One way would be schools should share what child abuse is so that children can speak up for themselves. You know, many children are scared, they don't want to speak up, they don't have someone to confide in with. So I believe that schools promoting this, making children aware of what child abuse is and when to say something is very important. I also believe the government should use its platform to promote the consequences of child abuse. Um, I also believe it is important for every child who is born, the parent must take or watch some sort of short video on consequences of child abuse. Parents should receive information on what to do if child abuse is an issue or where to get help or if they ever thought about anything about abusing a child. Also, have more funding for foster care. Have programs to help those in foster care learn how to get jobs and live on their own, and hire more social workers to help those children in need. Also, make childcare, foster care, and other programs more affordable. All of these points here, I believe, would be a great asset in helping the problem of child abuse. Together, I do believe that we can make a difference. And here are some references that I listed that I will use in this presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.